Hey there, this is Brian with RV Fridge Guys. The season is about to kick off up in New England or all around the country, really. And so we're going to make some videos just talking about some basics that we always get asked. And we're going to start getting these questions a lot more in the upcoming weeks here. So the thing we want to talk about today is just your gas absorption cooling unit. So if you have a cooling unit on your refrigerator that can operate on propane, it can also run on AC, then this is for you. So these cooling units do fail, but they're oftentimes misdiagnosed. So I'm just going to help you understand exactly how these fail and what some of the signs are of them failing. So whether you have a Norcold cooling unit or a Dometic cooling unit, if it's a gas absorption style, they all operate the exact same way. You boil ammonia, the vapors rise, they condensate up at the top and flow down. Now, these all fail from the exact same thing. All of these cooling units fail from the degradation of the ammonia solution that's inside the cooling system. If you overheat that system for a prolonged period of time, we're typically talking about years, eventually what happens is you'll either get a rupture in the cooling system, it'll leak out, and you'll have signs like yellowish powder in the back area, or a smell of ammonia, or what you'll have, and this is not going to be visible, you'll have a blockage caused by the ammonia condensation mixture, which has sodium chromate in it. That sodium chromate will actually form a blockage in your coils and block the flow of ammonia. Now, typically that's just a partial blockage. It'll prevent your cooling unit from working well. It'll work really well, and then your blockage will float through the system, clog it up temporarily, and then float through. But it's a sign that your cooling system has been overheated. And this is almost always caused by off-level operation. So off-level operation, we're not talking about off-level operation as you're driving. It's fine to drive up and down hills. There's no issues there. But when you're parked and you're going to be staying at a campsite for a while, you want to make sure that you are level. Within 3 degrees of perfectly level. That's what the standard is. Now, it's Norcold and Dometic. If you take a look at the cooling unit coils, you take the access panel off the back of the refrigerator, the lower one, and you take a look at those coils, that's the reason that you need them to be level. It's a gravity-operated cooling unit, and so if you're not within 3 degrees, that ammonia solution that's flowing down, that's actually getting everything cold inside your freezer and your refrigerator, it doesn't flow. And that's when the ammonia starts to overheat in the boiler area, and that's where you start to degrade the solution. So the most important thing is to make sure that you are level after you get to your campsite. Really, really simple thing. Most people do understand this, but there's a lot of people that don't. And so when you buy your RV, when you're taken out, it's not something that you're told by the dealership. Right? It's just something that you're expected to know. And it's a very big difference, right, between your household unit that runs off a compressor and a gas absorption system. And when you're coming into this space, you're more focused on finding those perfect campgrounds, not understanding all the nitty gritty details about how all of your appliances work. But just know, if you operate this thing level, you should get at least 10 to 15 years lifespan out of your cooling unit. If you don't, if you do park off level from time to time and you're not as focused on this, it's not uncommon for your cooling unit to fail in a year or two. It can happen, and it's all from the same thing. So if you just focus on this, you will get more life out of it. Now, if you're sure that you're not off level, you're always leveling before you run your refrigerator for prolonged periods of time. The other things that can cause your cooling unit to overheat and to degrade the solution could be your ventilation. Now, this is pretty common too, right? If you're in the summertime, you're camping in a hot climate. Most of us are, right? It's summer. Your venting needs to be to spec, and most coaches right out of the gate do not have their ventilation to spec. So take a look at this. We have another video that kind of walks through the ventilation specs and some of the things you should be looking for, but really you just want a good chimney effect. You want the hot air that's in that back boiler area to rise up and then be directed out of your upper vent. If you have sharp corners, if you have edges with big gaps, air will take the path of least resistance. And if you're not forcing it across those fins and forcing it out, it will circulate and it'll pocket and your refrigerator will not work as well as it should. And if you're in a really hot climate, you will do some damage to the cooling unit. It's not something you're going to notice right away, but prolonged running it in really hot climates without good venting will cause damage. Okay, so now that we know what damages the cooling unit, let's focus on some very obvious signs that you've already done too much damage. It's time to bite the bullet, buy a new cooling unit, or maybe even buy a new refrigerator. Because replacing the cooling unit on your refrigerator, while it can be done, it's like replacing the engine in your car. It's a pretty big job. It's an expensive job. It will cost, sometimes 3/4 of the cost of a whole new refrigerator. So that is typically the time where you will start thinking about, okay, this refrigerator is 8 years old. Brian said that the life expectancy is 10 to 15 years. Maybe it's time to get a new one. Because what happens around that time as well, parts become discontinued by the manufacturer. Norcold, Dometic will start discontinuing some of these parts. And so if you're going to put in a part that costs $1,500 or $1,000, you don't want another really cheap component to potentially fail next year with no possibility of you getting that part. Your only option at that point in time would be to replace the whole thing. So based on the year, it is worth really thinking about whether or not you want to replace the whole unit. That said, cooling units can be replaced. Here is what you're going to be, visibly seeing and or smelling if your cooling unit has failed. There is a yellowish powder that you'll get, or like a yellowish dust that you'll get in that back cooling unit area. It'll be underneath the cooling system. Typically, it all starts over near the boiler, which is on the right-hand side. So if you actually peel apart that insulation, there's typically a metal wrapped, a tin piece that you can peel back and take a look in there where your AC heaters drop in. That is usually where you'll see a rupture, if you do have one. So really inspect that well. It's not going to be a bright yellow. Just take a look at the picture here. It does have more of a yellowish tint. If you're colorblind, ask someone else. You might also get a faint smell of ammonia. Sometimes it's a really strong smell of ammonia. It depends on how bad of a leak you got, but you can sometimes just smell it. The other way is if you've actually run a bypass test. Now, if you schedule tech support with us, we'll actually walk you through the proper ways of doing a bypass test, because it is a fire hazard. Right? You want to make sure that you're not just going to overheat your cooling unit and just leave it with your thermostat bypassed, because it's going to continue to run, and if it's out of ammonia, it is a fire risk, especially if you're bypassing a high temp limit switch or anything off to the right. Recommend not doing that. What we would tell you to do is to simply run it for a few hours. You don't need to run it for more than that. A lot of videos would tell you to run it for 8-10 hours. Don't do that. It only takes a few hours for your refrigerator to get down to temperature if it's running properly. So if temperatures aren't extreme, if you're level, and you're going to run a bypass test, we recommend first making sure that whatever mode of operation you're going to be running it on is working properly. So if you're going to run it on AC mode, ohm out your AC heater. Make sure your heater is good. Then you would simply bypass your thermistor inside the refrigerator, and let the refrigerator run for a few hours. Now you want to really watch things during these 3 hours. You don't want to just take off, leave, come back in a few hours and see where things are at. Stay there. And if there is no cooling after 3 hours time, there is something wrong. There is. You're either not producing enough heat, or you have something seriously wrong with your cooling unit. Pretty simple, right? I mean, I'm out here on the water, not even looking at the back of a cooling unit, and I can tell you pretty quickly, just based on a few different questions and answers, whether or not your cooling unit has failed. Now, hopefully, you know how to get the most out of your cooling unit, and troubleshoot it to make sure that your cooling unit has actually properly failed before replacing it. If you do need to run a bypass test, I would still recommend hiring tech support, or really going through a detailed article, step by step, walking you through what to do, because it is a fire hazard. Don't go just based on my very quick synopsis of how to bypass your thermostat and do that. You really want to make sure, because this is a very expensive part, and your life is very valuable, and so is your RV. And so let's not catch that thing on fire. Let's just make sure your cooling unit has actually properly failed before you replace it. Just so you know, we do sell cooling units. We also sell whole new refrigerators. We also do give technical support. So if you need any of those things, don't hesitate to reach out at rvfridgeguys.com.